Welcome to another episode of the Backpage Pod. I'm here with my co-host Grant Ahern. As always, slightly under the weather Grant Ahern this time. Although, can you tell the difference? Who knows? I'll leave it to you viewers. And we've got a fantastic guest today. Mr. Frank Smith has come down to the den to meet us. Frank, CEO of Matchroom Boxing, Director of Matchroom Sport. Thank you for coming.
No problem, anytime. It's first time I've been to Millwall, actually. I'm a West Ham fan, so I'm glad I've come on a day where there's no fans.
Yeah, this is it. You'll get to and from quite easily, no problem.
I ran very quickly. We ran enough.
This is it. It did look like you've been running.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming to see us. I mean, you can imagine, so always boxing questions to be asked. And you must be asked questions constantly, all day, every day, every time you go to a supermarket, every time you leave your front door.
I'm not that recognised yet. Fortunately, I'm not as recognised as Eddie, so no one stops me in supermarkets.
He gets all the questions.
At family parties, the number one question is still, when is Joshua going to fight Fury? So,
bump that down.
Yeah, bump that down. And then we'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so when does Joshua fight Fury?
Hopefully next year.
Frank, what's it like having a profile and everything now? I know you'll say Eddie obviously is the front man. He takes the sort of the main bulk of the recognition, I suppose. But what's it like? And is there pluses and downsides to that?
I've never been someone, boxing's full of egos. And I think I've worked for a man for 17 years who, he won't mind me saying, he has an ego, of course he does, but it's also part of being a promoter. Yeah. You have to, you look back at the promoters of years before, you have to have that ego and you have to be out there and you have to be outspoken, you have to speak about your fighters and you have to promote them, because sometimes they don't have the same voice that he does. So sometimes they stick about he's bigger than the fighters, but it's because he's consistently out there pushing our fighters. So it's a benefit for the people we promote. I think in terms of having a profile myself, it was never the focus for me. Like, people compare me to Eddie, but my focus has never been to be Eddie. I like doing paperwork, I like Excel spreadsheets, I like contracts, I like reading. We're two completely different ends of the spectrum. And if I didn't have to do press conferences or I didn't have to do media, I'd happily not do it. But we're such a big business now. Eddie's all like, tonight we've signed a guy called Pat Brown, he's in Manchester. I've got a dinner for a launch of our magazine that we created. So it's like we have to split the jobs really. But I still ultimately love my thing of just being the boring numbers contract geek in the background. But I'll do the public stuff. But yeah, the profile element, I suppose it hasn't really hit me yet. I haven't got too many followers and I'm not too famous. So, but once our Netflix program comes out, that could be the end or the start. Who knows? I could be on Love Island by the end of next year.
What can we expect from that, do you think?
I think it's going to be interesting. I think with all of these things, it's our life at the end of the day. It's what we do day in, day out. So for us, it's probably a bit boring, and you forget how exciting what we do is. And we're guilty of just going, another day, and then you're flying here, you're doing this, you're making this fun. Yeah. But I've watched a lot of these things. Like, I don't have a massive interest in football or Formula One, but you watch these programs, same with golf as well. And they're so interesting to understand the background of it, actually more interesting a lot of the time than the sport itself. So I think it will be great entertainment. I'm not looking forward to seeing myself on the camera. We've been walking around with mics for 50% of our lives for the last 6 months. So there's going to be some interesting stuff in there. And I think it's great for the business. It's something I push quite hard. It was never, for me, it's not about money. Like, we're not getting paid a lot of money to do it. It's about expanding the business, expanding fighters, our other areas of the business, darts, snooker. It's not just on boxing, pool, everything we do. We do 350 events a year. So it's going to be an interesting watch. And at the end of the day, we're a family business. And as much as we've grown over the last 15 years of me being there, or 40 odd years of the company going, it's still a family business at the heart of it. And the way we do things is still what we want to do, what we've got passion for, and it's fun. So I'm sure it's going to be an interesting watch. I'm not sure I'll be watching too closely
from behind the sofa.
Yeah, just thinking, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah.
Well, it's even based at the old family home, isn't it, Matchroom? Yeah. So that's how sort of rooted it is in the sort of Hearn family, I guess.
We've been filming a lot in the office. We're very, very rarely there, to be honest. We're trapped. I'll do 300 nights in hotels this year, so. I'm all over the place. The whole business is all over the place. Like I say, darts have got events almost every day. Same with our snooker business. So, we always come back there. But it's also following us all around the world as well with everything we're putting together.
Yeah. No, it sounds interesting. We'll be watching that. I think we'll be glued to that, won't we? Who's going to come out well from that and badly? No, that's another conversation.
You can do the review afterwards and let me know.
Yeah.
I'm sure my missus will be watching it, questioning things I've said.
Yeah, of course. So what's your journey to becoming that numbers geek then, Frank? I mean, I think a lot of people will assume that they know, you know, that you're sort of selling programs at York Hall as a kid and things like that. But what's the real sort of path that's led you to be the CEO?
I think I met Eddie when I was 14 years old. I was at Rumford Greyhound track. I was selling raffle tickets for a charity.
Right.
And I called him a tight bastard.
Right.
Because he only bought 20 quid's worth of tickets. And I think, as with anyone at that age, well, I'm not saying everyone, but back then especially, and where I was from, you were impressionable by money. And when I walked up, there was a Bentley outside, Eddie's number plate on it, and someone said, "That's Eddie Hearn." Yeah. I didn't know much about sport. I've never been, I'm not going to sit here and lie and pretend I was some crazy boxing fan growing up, but I just knew I wanted to go and do something from an early. I didn't want to go to college, university. It didn't interest me. I hated the fact of you get tested based on a test at the end of 3 years, and that's whether you're good or bad. That to me is not life, you know. So I never really wanted to go down that route, and I always wanted to go to work. And I met Eddie at the Greyhound track, and I said to him, "I'm either going to come and work for you, or I'm going to go and be a trader in the city," because from Essex, everyone was just a trader in the city. And Ferraris, obviously. So you know, that was for me the focus. And then when I joined, I was a runner at the events we do. So from 14, I did 3 weeks work experience at 14, same at 15. And I joined when I left school full time at 16. So I've been there over 16 years now, full time. I really just work through every area of our business. You know, everything we do. Now, at one point, I used to go and dress up in the mascot's outfit at Leyton Orient when we owned Leyton Orient. I used to sell darts tickets when we were, you know, whether it was still at the Circus Tavern. I used to give out leaflets at Romford Station at 6 o'clock in the morning, Liverpool Street Station at 6 o'clock in the morning. I used to cold call people trying to sell tickets. You know, like, I really did everything between the ages of 16 and 20 years old that gave me the grounding and the basis to go on to where I was. You know, I think so many people go into businesses at a high level, and they don't inherently understand the business and the way it operates and how to actually do jobs. You know, like, and I think that's what's always been great about Matchroom. You've been given opportunities to build your way up through the company, and that's the same like Matt Porter, who runs the darts. He started as the press officer at Leyton Orient. Emily Fraser, who runs Multisport, she started as a runner like I did. So I think everyone's given opportunities there, and it's for you to fail really. And if you keep doing well, you get given, you move up the ladder. And that's what's been great about it, is that people have had that opportunity. And like I said, that then gave me the ability to understand the business as a whole and everything. You know, I wrote press releases, it was useless at it. Oh, I'm not going to sit here and say I was any good, but I did it all, and then got to the point I'm at now. And you know, it's been a good journey. And boxing is the most stressful business in the world, but we have a good balance because I'm logic and like head over anything else. Eddie is literally passion of the sport for decisions as well. So we're a good balance between the two, where it's like he would make decisions because he loves boxing, and I'm not saying I don't love boxing. And you don't grow to love boxing, but I love events. I love putting on shows. So it's kind of the perfect balance, because if you have too much love and passion, it's hard to make logical decisions. So that was always the good sort of balance between the two of us, and really the difference in us, because we're not the same person. As much as people say, I was just trying to be like Eddie Hearn. You know, I don't think I am. I'm not as entertaining as him. I can sell like he can sell, but I can do a spreadsheet bloody well.
Yeah, we were going to say about the dynamic. Like, he obviously saw something in you from an early age, right, that has grown into fruition from here. What, that dynamic, has that grown into something different over the years?
Yeah, I think it was just pestering. You know, it was a very different business back then. It was literally, I just pestered him for a job. I said, if I don't come and work for you, I'll work for someone else. And I reckon I worked for, on the hours we were doing, probably about £2 an hour. You know, and if that's illegal, then I didn't. It's just a joke. It's illegal to say that
from the record.
But I think, you know, he gave me opportunities, and so did Barry, to do things when I was so young, to go and just basically said, go and give it a go. You know, when I was 19, Barry said, let's go and sell TV rights. And I was like, what's a TV right? He was like, I was selling TV rights to Argentina. I'm like, 19 years old and just,
of course.
and it was, they were the things. And what's so good about the business, they gave you opportunities. And even if you made mistakes, they said, don't do it again, move on. I think over the years, I've become very close with him. It's probably I've spent more time with him, and the same for him, than we have with our own families. Like, we've travelled the world together for the last 8 years, and we're on the road non-stop. So he's like an older brother, and like I say, we can scrap sometimes because we have different mindsets and different views on things, and that's good. That's good. He doesn't pay me just to sit there and go, yes boss, yes boss, yes boss. Maybe it might be easier sometimes, but that's that. I've grown very close with him and the family, and I even said the other day I'd change my name to Hearn if it helps with the will.
Of course. There you go. Says it all, really.
Does Matchroom, the business, does it have a legitimate interest in rugby league and Scottish football? And if it does, what does that look like?
I think we did. Rugby was something Barry and Eddie looked at a few years back now, I'm guessing probably 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And I think the reality with everything we do is we want control of the sport in order to make it a success. Now look, we've done it, what not me, but what Barry, Matt Porter, Eddie have done with the darts over the years is sensational.
The darts is incredible.
Yeah, and it's the second highest viewed sport in the UK after
everything
football.
About it is just mad.
Yeah, so that was, I think, when they had those discussions, such a breakup of the sport of rugby that I think it was about trying to bring it together, and I don't think there was ever the opportunity for that takeover or control. And yeah, we have to. I think we also have to have a lot of passion for anything we do, and I think football maybe isn't the thing that we have ultimate passion for. We looked at launching a football agency once, but it was just like, amongst everything else we're doing, is that something we have time for to deliver to the highest level? And anything we want to do, we want to make sure we do it properly. So you can't rush it. And Leyton Orient was very much a passion piece for Barry. It was probably the only business that ever lost money at any point because he loved Leyton Orient. But I don't really think they're sports that we would, without the opportunity to come in and take over, it's something we'd be able to do.
I suppose you'd have to physically, you'd need to take it over really to be able to fundamentally make any real difference. So I did hear a rumour a few years ago that Barry was going to take snooker players out of the waistcoats and put them in funny coloured shirts and stop all the silence in the crucible, and he was going to turn it into a darts thing. I did hear that.
Well, so you don't have to be silent.
Well, no, I don't think it ever. I don't think it ever happened. Could you? But I think Ronnie O'Sullivan probably got upset. I don't know.
Yeah.
But even that business though, like the snooker business, the numbers involved in snooker, for example, I think when people look at us as a group, boxing is sexy and always has been sexy for hundreds of years. So when people go, boxing, that Matchroom, like huge. Darts is, as a business, massive. Snooker is massive. So they all have different perceptions as well. Like I say, when you speak to people outside of the UK about darts and you go, yeah, it's the second most viewed sport in the UK, which it is. In terms of viewing figures, I think they did 4 and a bit million for the final last year. And don't get me wrong, Luke Littler was a huge part of that. But darts as a sport is just, like, we sell 100,000 tickets. And I say we, I'm not taking the credit for that. I'd love to be transferred to the darts business. We sell 100,000 tickets for the World Championships in a day, and no one even knows who's playing.
It's mad. You
buy your tickets, you don't even know who you're going to watch. And I'm not saying that doesn't. It's a very different business because boxing is talent led, and snooker and darts and what they've created for those businesses. Our talent is important. I'm not by any means saying talent's not important. Of course it is. But you can create tournaments that people every year buy into and events and schedules that people go, I've got to be there. And obviously they want to see the players they like, but it still sits there on its own merit. And our boxing business is, that fighter's out in that show in 7 weeks, what we're going to do? We're going to have to move it to the other side of the country. It's completely different.
I mean, I think bringing the Premier League in for darts was a huge success. I mean, that's been absolutely massive.
Yeah, the tickets for that, same. Just sell. The numbers are huge. The viewing figures continue to go through the roof, and Yeah, I'm praying for my transfer. I'm going to do a little loan in the summer with someone.
If you're watching,
yeah, the opportunity's there.
But I mean, the other thing Matchroom did really well was during the pandemic. You know, the way they did fight night in the back garden in Essex. You know, instead of just being in an empty hall with no atmosphere, that was incredible.
It was improvisation.
It was, and it kept boxing. Like they still felt like they had atmosphere to them. That was really. I don't know if that was your idea or Reddy's idea or whoever's idea that was. That was an absolute cracker of an idea.
There will always be an argument as to whose idea.
I was just thinking as you asked that. Yeah.
I remember sitting in the office. When was it? February or March of 2021?
Yeah.
And I was sitting there and I said we should build a venue in the garden. And everyone went, "Oh, shut up!" Like that, you know, like this. So then 3 months later, it comes to May, June. Eddie goes, "You know what I've been thinking? I should build a venue in the garden and call it Fight Camp." And I was like, so all I didn't come up with was Fight Camp.
Just for the record.
Yeah, just for the record. Yeah. He came up with the words Fight Camp. I came up with the idea of building a venue in the garden. But
brilliant.
No, that was sport needed something to keep it going and keep, you know, keep the atmosphere in something. Like you say, there was no one there, but it still felt like something special.
Yeah.
And those nights, I remember we were talking about it the other day, like when Dillian White fought Povetkin in the garden of our office, and it was like chilling, you know, like when he lost that fight, obviously he got stopped there, but Katie Taylor against Delphine Pursoon as well on that card, like they were mad to think, and we were staying at the Holiday Inn down the road, and some of the stories from there, like Dillian White had a Winnebago, or 2 Winnebagos. Of course. He didn't want to stay in a Holiday Inn. And we were playing football over the fence here. Like we built all these fences, like separate areas. Yeah. And we kicked the football into his area of the Winnebagos, and someone had to go and get the ball.
Who's that, Frank?
Yeah, no, I think we sent Eddie in for that one. Yeah. But the whole thing, it was like, when you look back now, like 4 weeks at the Holiday Inn on the edge of the M25.
In the bubble.
Yeah, I won't go back to the Holiday Inn. No disrespect to the Holiday Inn in Brentford, but I won't be going back there for 4 weeks.
Chapter's closed, yeah, fair enough, I think. Is there any other sports, just listening to you talking about the passion that's required to get involved in something else, where does Matchroom go next? Is there a sort of vision for the future that you could get involved in a sport that you are passionate about as a company and that you'd like to get involved with quite heavily again? Is there anything, or is there just not room and time for that almost in the schedule, because you're doing so much? You're away 300 nights of the year as it is.
Yeah, I think time is definitely the biggest factor in there. Like I say, our core sports, boxing, obviously snooker, darts, and then we have 9-ball pool that we've made a huge investment into, which we believe is going to be the next one. You know, in what we've done, it takes a long time. Like darts, they've been doing it for 20 plus years, investing in the business to get it where it is. Snooker has been even longer than that. You know, so it takes a lot of time and effort. I think anything we do, like I say, we need to go into it 100%. We're not just going to go in half-assed and. You know, in the past we've been involved in other sport, like we did a bit of gymnastics, we did basketball, netball, but it wasn't really
fishing for a while.
Fishing will never go, because fishing is like Barry's passion. Yeah. So fishing will be there forever, basically. But for us, you need to have, I think, the passion for it, but also the time and the ability to make a difference. And that's what they've done with, you know, the 2 sports, especially in snooker and darts. They've made a difference because they've had control in order to do so. And yeah, for me and Eddie, I think boxing is our focus, obviously, and it takes up, like, it is the hardest sport in the world to work in. I'll never say never, you know, but now it's about really scaling those businesses that we have to an even bigger level and continuing to build and grow globally.
Would it take almost a sports governing body to come to you guys and say, well, look, we'd have to hand you over control for you to sort of say, yeah, okay, we're interested in that?
I think so, yeah, like the commercial element of it, of course. You know, there's obviously two separate sides, one the sporting side and one the commercial element of it. And I think that would need to be the case in order to do so. But you see now, there's so many breakaways of all these different sports and so many different concepts. I saw even today in football, I'm not a mad, like I said earlier, I'm not a mad football fan. But they've just come, I think KSI and I Show Speed have just launched something, a 6-a-side thing that they're going to do. That's going to be huge, you know, like to a different audience, because sport needs to keep evolving and changing, because like a younger audience, don't want to sit there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. And I even say that with our shows. I think boxing needs to continue to evolve, because that's what UFC have done so well. It's so fast paced. You know, and I think all sports need to continue to develop, and sometimes it's easy to sit there and go, well, no, it's the way we've been doing it for 50 years or 40 years, and it's like, yeah, but it doesn't mean it's good, does it? It's just like what cricket had, I guess, 10 years ago or maybe longer. You know, when I started doing the 2020s, like I've got no interest in cricket, but I'll go and watch 2020 because it's faster paced.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the right concept, isn't it?
Yeah.
So could you possibly envision a world where men's boxing potentially goes down to like 2 minutes a round or something, just to speed it up? Or
the problem is the hardcore boxing fans would look at you and go, "You're absolutely mental," and it's always that fine balance between doing something a bit different that keeps the sport growing. You know, like when you look at like Misfits, for example, it's two separate things, right? But if it brings in a younger audience and a new group of people into the sport, it's not bad for the sport. You know, if it means that 20% more kids are going to go to boxing gyms and train in boxing, happy days. If it means that 10% of those kids then show an interest in the future of professional boxing, great. You know, that's all making a positive change, and you sort of have to sit back and go, that's good. You know, and that's beneficial for the sport. So I don't know what the idea is, I don't know how it works, but I do think something needs to change there. And I think, look, the strength UFC have had is they control the sport. You know, you don't look at UFC, people think UFC is the sport, whereas MMA, it's just a brand of MMA. But they've become bigger than the sport itself, and they've also become bigger than the talent, really. You know, there was points, you know, Conor, you could say, is outside of that, really. But they've become so powerful that they can really do what and they say, right, you're fighting him. And it's different businesses as well. It's like boxing has been around for so long. Purses are very high in boxing in comparison to UFC. And there's, you know, less control really in boxing. You know, so in some ways it's good for the fighters, but not for the growth of the sport, if that makes sense. You know, and it's taking a longer term view for the sport, really, I think.
Yeah, I think you can kind of see that like sports are being forced to evolve a lot more now, right? You mentioned cricket, obviously golf's got the breakaway tours, various things. Where does kind of boxing go in terms of like the shows and the formats and everything? I guess this is a question for the next few years of like what can you do to kind of bring it even further into the future, you know, modernise it more?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard, like you say, to change the format of the sport, like the 2 minute, like 2 minute rounds for female boxing is unbelievable to watch.
Yeah,
you know, look at all these amazing female, and it's like there's no lulls or downtime. And sometimes in male fights, you know, fighters take a minute off. You know, like, and again, I'm not a boxer, I'm not getting in the ring, so like I say this from I look at everything we do because I'm not a mad hardcore boxing fan. It's if I was just a general bloke going to watch sport, for example, in my shoes, would I sit here and go, this is entertaining? And I can say it even sometimes about some of our shows or some of our fights. I go, I won't be sitting here for 5 hours. You know, like, but you have to be honest, you know what I mean? It's the only way you like take it. So many people are so protective and loving it. You know, it's like, actually, we want to make the sport as big as possible. And how do we do that? By making it entertaining. You know, like for me, and we're looking at our 2025 plans now, like I went to the Sphere for the UFC before we had Canelo was fighting Edgar Berlanga that night, so we popped into the Sphere. It's so fast paced. There's no wasting of time of people on broadcast. Like for me, it's the one thing I think. Do I need to hear what a former boxer has to say about that last fight for 10 or 15 minutes?
Right.
Not really. I want to watch live sport. And I want to adjust the program. So it's like at the start you have a build-up show. And if you want to watch it and you're interested in how they're going to tactically win this fight, you watch that. Then you watch just pure boxing for 4 fights or whatever the time frame is. And then at the end of it, we review every fight. And if you're interested in hearing that data, that analytical side of it, you've got that. And if you're there to watch the boxing, it's much more engaging rather than, we're going to take another break now and talk about that fight. And look, not every fight's interesting. That's the reality. Not every fight you're going to watch is going to be, that was unbelievable. So do I need to sit there and listen to someone then talk for 10 minutes about that boring fight? No, not really. But again, it's changing the mindset of people, and especially people in TV as well. Oh, that's, what are you doing? How are we going to, it's like, yeah, but you have to move with the times. And I think that there's going to be concepts, there always is. Like you look at all the concepts that are launching around the sport of boxing. I think we're in a good place with Saudi's involvement, with fights happening between promoters, taking away that ego. And I think that's you're going to continue to see that.
Yeah, good. I mean, you mentioned Saudi.
Yeah.
As a nice natural little connection there, because I think obviously Turki Al Sheikh has really helped boost the profile and invested so much to change the landscape of boxing in the last 2 years really. Are they quite progressive and keen to move boxing and the format of it on? Do they want to kind of implement changes of the sort of things we're talking about here now? Like, do they want to change the way sort of boxing shows are?
I think they want to see great fights, you know, and I think there's multiple factors of boxing that need to improve, and one is making great fights. Like, for too long, fighters were having easy touches, and again, I speak from it, not from a boxer will have a different mindset, obviously. And there was so much investment, there's always been so much investment in the sport of boxing, right? So every 2 or 3 years, someone new comes in with bundles of money, right? And they say, I'm going to promote you now, and your first fight's easy, and I'm going to give you double the money, right? But eventually, that promoter needs to get their money, you know, so it's like, it's a constant game where people jump around in boxing a lot of the time, right? There's very little loyalty, and I get that because fighters want to make as much money. So I'm not questioning that. But when you look at the growth of the sport, when we want to see great fights, it's meant that not always, and we're all guilty of it, by the way. I'm not saying other promoters, but making fights that aren't as interesting because I want to get paid X amount of money, but I don't really want to have a hard fight. And it's like, actually, it's completely wrong for the growth of the sport. It might be good for you as an individual, but long term, if you want to look at the long term of the sport, why UFC have done so well is they put people in with each other and real fights happen. Going back to Saudi, the truth is they've made great fights that people want to see with great fighters and taken away the ego, the issues with broadcasters competing, you know, that's been great. I don't know what their long-term vision is of, do they want to change it to 2 minutes, you know, like all these things. Like, I do think something has to happen in the sport, but I think they're a big benefit and positive for the sport right now, and what they've done in 12 months really, from October last year, with when they started with Fury and Garner, it's quite spectacular to see. And when you think about the fights you've seen over the last 12 months, it's great to see. So hopefully that investment continues, and hopefully their interest in the sport continues, because it's good, it's great.
Well, they've managed to cut a lot of the political red tape as well, certainly between promoters and everything else. I mean, if I was to ask you, what is the relationship between Queensberry and Matchroom like now?
It's mad, really, because the truth is we never knew each other, if that makes sense. You know, like, we'd sit on things like YouTube, you know, like boxing had so many YouTube interviews around it. It would be like, he said this about you, and then you'd say this, and then it'd go back and forward, and in the end you'd just be like, oh my God, I've never even met the bloke to actually, but it's just created by, and I'm not saying, like, it took money to get us together, of course it did. I'm not going to sit here and lie, you know, like, it took that investment. Would we have necessarily done it? Maybe not, right? But now we've done it, it's beneficial for the sport, and actually we all get along. It's not fake, it's not like, we're always all going to be competitors, and that's good for the sport that there's competition. But if we can do things that make sense, like we made a great fight that was on BT the other week, we were exclusive with DAZN, but we made a great fight on BT the other week with Liam Davis and Shabazz Masood. That was a brilliant fight. You know, so all of these things are benefiting the sport. And we actually, when we spend time together now, like we had dinner with Frank Warren, you know, it's great. And you have a good laugh and everything. But again, you've got to keep that element of competitiveness, of course. But, you know, I think that things are moving in the right direction. And that was the reason it happened. But we're now taking that away from just Saudi events, and we're saying, right, let's do more here. You know, Queensberry are obviously joining with DAZN from April next year. You know, and I think we're going to do even more business, which will be good for the sport.
Got to say, a year or two ago we'd have laughed, wouldn't we?
I know,
about
crazy.
this situation. Everyone getting on, Pete's breaking out.
Fantastic.
Well, not everyone, but most
Yeah.
people. No, but when you look at the things that were said as well, and you think, bloody hell, did I say that about it? You know, like, and it's quite funny now because I look back and just laugh. But it was mad where you'd say things, because it'd be like, well, he said this about you, and then someone would send you a clip, and you'd be like, just be constant back and forth, and it was childish in many ways, because it was, but it was also driven, like I say, by media. You know, because that's what sells.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you said, it's about now, isn't it? With the fights that are being made now, and we're enjoying those great fights that are being made, which we'd hoped for a long time. Is there a sort of long-term discussion with the other promoters or with Turki Al-Sheikh and the Saudi guys about sort of how it goes from here, or is it literally living in the here and now for the moment and just enjoying the fact big fights being made?
I think he's enjoying the here and now.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, I'm sure there's always discussions ongoing around what the future holds, but it's about really show by show and what they, they're putting on. Saudi are putting on amazing shows. What Seller are doing, His Excellency doing for the sport is great, but I think it's just taking it step by step, and if there's something for the future, they're going to be the guys that can do it. Boxing's always been so splintered really, and the only people who could bring boxing together, there's been talk for years about the UFC of boxing, for example, are really the Saudis, or an investment into the sport as a whole. But I think the way it's operating now is working. I think great fights are being made between every promoter, and there's no allegiance with one. It's if you promote a fighter tomorrow who's really good, or you promote a fighter, or I promote a fighter individually, then they'll be on the shows. And I think that's good. That's good. It's no favouritism.
Can that kind of piece continue, do you think? We all hope it does. We're all enjoying the ride at the moment, but
the one thing I always say is, even when there hasn't been peace, there's still been ability to make fights. At the end of the day, it's just like anything. We're all in business. We want to make good things happen. Even when Oscar hasn't got on with Eddie, we deal with Eric Gomez, who's been with Oscar De La Hoya for years. Like, Oscar's currently saying he's going to knock Eddie out in a fight, for example. But I'm still speaking to Golden Boy about making multiple fights. It's a business that there's a lot of talking as well, and I think we've always managed to steer clear of that. Even when we weren't necessarily getting on with Queensberry, we still made fights with them. Even the relationship we got with Boxer, for example, we still had fighters fighting their card. So you have to, if you dislike someone so much that you can't do business with them, you're in the wrong business. Because there's so many people, I'll be honest with you, so many people in boxing to dislike that you'd just be in the wrong business. And so you just have to go, do you know what, I really don't like you. And sometimes it's better being honest, but we're here just to make fights, and that's our business. We've got to deliver for the fighters. So forget ego, forget all of that element of it. It's just about making great fights.
Obviously, Eddie's got such a big profile. Frank Warren has, Ben Shalom's obviously come up in the last few years with Boxer. Is that quite daunting when you're going in as a CEO and knowing how much attention can be on you guys and how many videos you can be asked to make in a week, like fight week, obviously this week, of getting a soundbite from you, and like this kind of pressure that you maybe need to say this or say that or get a reaction from you?
Yeah, I don't think, I've been doing interviews now with probably the last 7-8 years, and there's been bad moments where you say things that people don't necessarily agree with, and you're never going to keep everyone happy. And I think as long as you just, like, if I do actually read comments and I find them hilarious.
You
like,
actually go there, do you?
I think I quite enjoy it. My mum messages me and goes, "Are you okay, Doug?" Like, my mum gets upset about it, and I find it hilarious because I just think, I can't believe you're watching a video of me, A. B, then commenting is even a step too far. And then there's people supporting you as well, responding to the hate. And it's like, what are you even doing? I don't even know you, But I love those ones, by the way. So if they could keep coming and the hate could die. But like I say, I think because I've never clambered for profile. Like as many people may think I have an ego. Like if I had an ego, I wouldn't be working for Eddie Hearn. Like because he's the profile of the business. So if I was focused on my own, if I just wanted to make a celebrity of myself, I'd go somewhere else. Because it's quite easy to get lost behind him because he's a celebrity, a big character. And even when I sit in meetings with him, I sit there and go like this, and I sort of listen, and then I talk when I've got an idea, and But I've been around that my whole life, so it doesn't really bother me. And I think the only way you get better at this kind of stuff is by doing it. So I made a lot of mistakes, right? I've done press conferences where the first press conference I've done, I was like that. Like my knees would go in and Eddie would ring me afterwards and go, "What the fuck was that?" And you'd be like, well, I was 20. I actually spoke to Oscar De La Hoya at the weekend, right? So I bumped into him in Vegas. And I said, when I was 23, I did a press conference with him in LA, right? And he was probably looking down going, "Who is this fat little shit?" And I didn't realise behind me there was this big screen, and it was a split screen between me and Oscar De La Hoya. And I'm there, and I've said something, I don't know what I said, and I'm there like this, like like a child, like smiling, and he's just sitting there going like that. And I remember like all of these things. The problem is, like I say, you only get better the more you do. and it's all filmed now. So every mistake you've made or will make or is out there, and you kind of just have to go. You know, and I've made gaffes in that. I've said things in the past where if you know me, you'd know that the way I meant it was not. You know, sometimes things come across differently, and people's perception of what you say doesn't always align with what you meant. And I've made gaffes in the past where it's like I go on Twitter, and I've deleted Twitter now because it's the worst place in the world. And you're like, what an absolute wanker, what a prick, what a wanker, what a fat twat. Like, and it'd just be like, oh my God, I can't be. As much as I'm a positive, happy person, it doesn't really add to your life looking at all that.
Not usually.
And I think that's the biggest thing now is the mistake. You know, you're only going to learn by making mistakes. So now it doesn't really bother me what I say. I only ever say what I feel. I don't toe someone else's line if I don't believe in it or I don't agree with it. And it doesn't always make you fan favourite with everyone you work with. But I think it's the easiest way to be and go about it because you don't have to then backtrack. No. So say, yeah, I said it. And if you don't agree, I'm really sorry. But you got your opinion, I got mine. And if you don't want to, and also don't watch it. It's quite simple.
Turn over.
Yeah, just watch someone else.
Yeah. Is one of the things on your horizon in the coming years maybe that when AJ hangs his gloves up, are you looking for the next big stars behind him to sort of fill that void almost?
Yeah, look, I think you have to be open though. There's only ever going to be. It's like when you look at Floyd Mayweather, for example, or like Anthony Johnson, and again, I'm not comparing necessarily the two, but like, or Canelo Alvarez. Every now and then there's these superstars that come along, right? And it's not as simple as just going, right, replicate what they did. You know, there were so many things that came together at once. I think with boxing, what's tough is you look at fighters, and I give you examples from years back, like Tony Bellew. When we did Tony Bellew's first fight in Liverpool, I think we had 1,000 people in there, right? And if you would have said to me, Tony Bellew's last 3 fights, or 4 fights, one would be in a stadium at Goodison Park, 3 would be on pay-per-view headlining, he'd go on to become a Hollywood actor, I would have said, you're absolutely mental, as an example, right? So it's so difficult in boxing to, like, sometimes you know who's going to be that star, but it's not as easy as just going, right, that's the one, because there's so many factors that come into it. Lee Wood's another example, right? Who would have said Lee Wood would, after he took that loss earlier, would go on to do what he did in the sport, you know? And there's so many of these where it's Carl Froch, for all of my, you know, maybe disagreements with Carl Froch, who would have said he'd go on to sell 80,000 tickets, as he reminds everyone at Wembley, for example.
Is that a fact?
It's a fact. I can confirm.
I did hear that somewhere.
Yeah. He's not lying. I can confirm he's not lying. But you know, and there's names we will focus on and put a big effort behind. But at the same time, there's people that come out of nowhere, and you go, wow, you know, I never expected that. You know, and that's a part of boxing. You know, our business is very much a global business now in boxing. We've got fighters from probably 20 different countries, you know, and we're doing, like I say, 35 events a year. We're doing in the US, in Mexico, in Monaco in a couple of weeks. You know, we're in Puerto Rico, Saudi, we're all over the place week in, week out. So we're always looking for who that next star is going to be. But it's about aligning as well. Sometimes the best fighter doesn't necessarily have the best star power. You know, it's about balancing those two out. And sometimes some who work a lot harder will do better than the ones who've got the sheer natural talent. And, you know, you only find out as you go along.
In sort of making Matchroom Boxing this massive global business, as you say, you're away all the time, you've got shows all over the world. Have you been battling against perhaps the traditionalists and trying to sort of drag them along with you when perhaps they, you know, rather just see a show at Goresborough Leisure Centre in Dagenham or something like that? And is there a split in kind of the audience, do you think? Like the traditional boxing fan to the sort of modern, the newer one?
I think there's a split in hardcore boxing fans and what they like and what they want to see against what is sometimes commercially better for the sport. You know, and there will always be that. And it's like without the commercially sensible, appropriate stuff that happens, you wouldn't get this side of thing. You know, like, so they kind of want it both ways. So, and also hardcore fans in anything, you have to always look beyond that in any sport, because at the end of the day, we all want to go out to the biggest, most, and they probably hate this, like casual audience. AJ didn't sell pay-per-views and break the records he did just by selling to hardcore boxing fans. He became a star to casual sports fans all around the world. So we, of course, I think ultimately Eddie is a boxing fan. So he is that hardcore boxing fan in many ways, you know, whether people agree or disagree. And I'm the other side. So that's where the balance sometimes comes into it. But yeah, we have to be mindful of the fans that are there, but also we have to expand to a new audience, you know, and that, like I say, go back to the point of like a misfits. And look, even Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, I don't agree with Jake Paul, Mike Tyson fighting, right? I can't, like, I'm not going to sit here and lie, and I said it before. But what it did do is bring eyeballs to a sport, and it wasn't professional boxing. And once you accept that and you say there's a market, there is a market for it. It was 80,000 or 70,000 people in there, and I don't know what they say, 75 million people tuned in for it. There is a market for that, but that's entertainment, if you like. And if that's entertainment and it adds to the sport of boxing, happy days. And don't watch it if you don't want to watch it. You know, I don't think it's good for boxing. Sitting here as someone who works in boxing, it's not the sport, the sports side of the boxing. It's the commercial side of the boxing and bringing eyeballs in. And if you can, you just have to look at it from two different angles. You know, and it wasn't professional boxing. You know, in professional boxing, you'd never have a fighter in Jake Paul saying, "I took it easy on him." Like, that's not competitive sport, is it? So again, accept what it is, but also accept it can be, you know, it was a spectacle. Yeah. Even I sat there, right, and I've had my differences with Nikisa. I said, fair play, amazing event that you've put together, you know. And I think we can all learn things from these side of things and take them in, you know, certain elements into the professional section of it. Again, 10% of those people getting interested in boxing, happy days. It's good for all of us.
Absolutely. Speaking of star power, how big do you think Johnny Fisher's star power is going to be? Because he seems to be, in terms of the up and comers, the one who can really sell tickets. He's got a really massive fan base growing, hasn't he?
Yeah, huge. And look, he resonates with people. People love him, and they love his dad as well. And you know, he speaks very well, and I think he's coming on as well. You know, in terms of from a fighting standpoint, sometimes when you create sort of that profile that he has and you sell tickets like he has, you're looked at as a less seriously and more like, oh, it's just a ticket seller. When actually he's got, yeah, he's a really good fighter. But at the same time, that comes with negatives where people are going to expect you to move quicker. I.e., if he was just a random fighter on the pro scene and wasn't selling tickets and didn't have the profile, you could probably move him in a different way. But now the demand's going to be, you got to move him quicker, you got to build him quicker, obviously. So it's always battling between those two. But yeah, he's got the potential. His dad's got 500,000 followers. You know.
Yeah, people know his dad on social media and don't even know Johnny Fisher is.
I know. But I go out with people and they go to me, like, from all walks of life, right? Some of the poshest people I know, and they go, "Do you know Big John?" And I'm like, "Really?" Yeah. And they're like, "I want Big John to go for a Chinese. I want to go for a Chinese with him." I was like,
yeah.
Mate,
he seems like a lovely fella.
No, he is. He's great with the prawn crackers as well.
Fortune cookie?
Yeah, no, I don't know. Do you know, I've never been on a Chinese with him.
I was just about to ask that.
I've never been on a Chinese. Look at me in the fitness condition I'm in. I can't be going for Chineses.
Have you seen the size of his Chineses as well?
No, I haven't. They're massive. We're talking a set meal for
like 8.
It's amazing how you can build something now on social media. Like, I'm not saying it's so easy to become famous now, but you're battling now. Like, it's like Love Island, isn't it? Like I don't watch Love Island, but I see people on social media with millions of followers, and they're like season 7 of Love Island, and it's like fame is so easy to build now. It's about how you actually utilize it in the right manner and take it forward and have a sort of skill set with it, rather than just being famous. We can all, I'm sure, in some ways do something that makes us famous eventually. But he's using that from his boxing perspective. He's selling a bundle of tickets and he's doing amazingly well, and massive numbers on DAZN as well. So yeah, he is one that is definitely going to be on the right trajectory. But it's just the element of the boxing side coming into that and marrying the two up and moving at the right pace
and managing him fight by fight, I suppose.
Yeah.
You don't want him getting knocked out because he had the wrong fight at the wrong time.
And heavyweight boxing is the most, look, we've seen it. Daniel Dubois is a perfect example of someone who was written off at 24 or something when he fought Joe Joyce, or maybe 23. Yeah. Everyone said he's finished. Yeah. And look what he's gone on to do. And that's the other thing that I think needs, going off topic, but needs to change in boxing, is this mentality of someone loses, they're finished. And that's something I always say to fighters, like, if you take real fights and you give it your all and you're in a great fight, there's going to be more opportunities for you. And that's where boxing has gone wrong for me in the last, or in previous times, in the last 10, 15 years. People haven't been taking fights, they've been taking easier touches, and it hasn't grown the sport. And that's the complete opposite to what UFC have done.
But yeah, fighters are frightened of taking it, which is silly really, because David Haye took an early loss. He was knocked out in his 10th fight, I think. Amir Khan, really early on, was knocked out. And they both went on to become world champions.
Derek Chisora, another example, right? I'm very close with Derek Chisora. We don't promote him, he's a big Queensbury, but he's like become a close friend over the years. And he is a great example of like someone who's built a profile, built a story, had losses, but every time been in unbelievable fights. And people just want to see you have the reality of it is, like, and this is sometimes again where I'm different, boxing like off the jet, like silky boxing skills, most of the time, it's really like Andre Ward was a perfect example of someone who was an unbelievable boxer, never had the profile to go with it. You know, but he was an amazing fighter, probably one of the best around its time. You know, didn't have the profile, so it's a fine balance again. And it's about, like, we signed a guy called Pat Brown yesterday. He was in the Olympics. He's from Manchester. He's going to sell a load of tickets, but he likes to tear up, and he's going to come and bring it. And that is what people want to see. It's not rocket. We want to see entertainment, don't we? You know, and there's a very small section of the world that wants to watch pure boxing. If I'm honest, yeah, and it's like actually what they want to see is tear ups, because that's same with UFC, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Frank, when you're signing a fighter, you know, Pat Brown's obviously a recent one. You guys sign a lot of fighters regularly, up and coming guys. How much of it is personality driven now, fighting? Are you looking for someone who can obviously put themselves forward as well? Because I guess if you get the best fighter in the world, but he doesn't have anything to say, or she doesn't have anything to say, then is that a bit of an issue in terms of getting that profile that they perhaps deserve?
Yeah, look, I think everyone's different. It's so hard to say in a round, you know, like, look at Alexander Usyk and what he's done, and he's been like, I am Phil, you know, like, and that smile, and even before he spoke much English, he built a profile in the UK, didn't he, over the years. You look at Casey Taylor, she's not the biggest of speakers, like, she's not interested in fame really, or social media, but look at what she's gone on to do. She's like the sweetheart of Ireland and loved, and has broken all sorts of records, you know, like, so it's not like one size fits all. Profile and personality, like I always say, my father-in-law is Chris Eubank Sr., and when you look at what he did, he created a persona, or is what he is, but he was either loved or hated, but people wanted to watch him, you know, during his peak. And I think more fighters don't look at the entertainment, like, look at the WWE, like, people want entertainment, they want to buy into something. Again, whether they like you or dislike you is kind of irrelevant. If you can put up with the fact of being disliked, you're really living a bit of an act to build a profile for yourself. And I think that's what more fighters need to do, is actually not create an act, but people need to have a feeling about you. They need to either, again, hate you or like you. You prefer when people like you, I'm sure. But if it sells and it's positive for you and you can build something off the back of it, happy days.
Like big John Fury type.
Yeah, or like, look, even Ben Whittaker.
Yeah.
You know, Ben Whittaker's an example of someone who, like, he's got the personality, he's got the profile, and whether you like his arrogance, it's kind of like, well, I'm still going to watch it, aren't I? You know, and he's built that. So, you know, I think it is, personality is always good, but it's not just a tick box where you go just that, because other people have other benefits that come into it.
You mentioned a couple of names earlier on, but when a fighter has had a long sort of distinguished career, and we talk about all the time, should so-and-so stop, they've had a bad knockout, they've, you know, taken a lot of blows to the head. How much influence can you have in a promotional company to sort of say, well, you know, we could maybe move you into doing something else, is it time to stop? I think this is a debate we have quite a lot about, you know, is enough for a fighter? But with the rewards that are on offer, it's difficult to stop maybe for some fighters, you know?
Yeah, sometimes it's not just about money, it's their love, literally, for fighting.
Yeah.
You know, like I say, I go back to Derek Chisora. He is someone I class as like a friend, and I would have said to him, like, away from professionally, what more are you doing this for? Like, as in, you know, you see a lot of it. Boxing's a hard sport. It's not just the fight itself. It's the training. It's the sparring. It's everything around it. Like, what are you doing it for? Like, you got money. You made money. Yeah. You've been in with everyone, basically every big name you can imagine. What do you want from it? He's like, I want, I think 50 fights. I think he said, like, he's got a pack. Like, he loves the sport. He don't want to do anything else. You know, but then you look at people calling people out to retire, like Anthony Joshua off the back of that fight. Yeah. He's like, you know, he should be done now. It's like, wait a minute. Before that fight, he was back and he was he was up there amongst number 1, 2, 3 of the heavyweights in the world, right? And everyone was saying that, right? And he gets beat by Dubois, who, anyone who gets punched by a 17, 18 stone man, flush on the chin, yes. I mean, I'm sure we could all get knocked out. Like, that's the reaction. And we've seen it. Like, Usyk's been hurt by Fury. Fury's been hurt by Usyk. Like, they can all hurt each other. On their best day, they can. Ngannou nearly stopped Fury. You know, like, all these things, you can compare them all. But actually, the reality is, they're all there. They can all beat each other. They're all very good. They've all got a massive punch. If you get caught on the chin by any of them, you're in trouble. And we're so quick to jump to the fact that, I should retire. Like, even journalists within boxing, who, obviously, everyone can have their opinion, but I think you have to take an approach like, AJ lost against Ruiz. He went straight back in there, he beat him. He then lost against Usyk, who undoubtedly is probably pound for pound number 1 in recent times in the sport as a whole, what he's done at cruiserweight, what he's done at heavyweight. He then went straight back in there, had a close, an even closer fight with him. There's no harm in getting beat. Like, what are we doing it for if you get beat by someone who's great and they go, you should retire? Yeah. Like, what's the sport all about? And that's what the sport's become, and that's the negative of it, is someone loses, they're written off. Yeah. And again, go back to Dubois 4 or 5 years ago, written off completely. Now gone on to do, now he's unbelievable. You beat them all. And that's what needs to change, really, in my opinion. But I think, when it comes to retire, look, there are certain fighters you think you should retire, but it's all they know, and we've had a number of fighters. Darren Barker works with us now on our broadcast team full-time, Tony Bellew the same, Andy Lee is with us quite a lot, so we've got a number of fighters that we bring in, but it's really, they're the only ones that can tell you when time has come. But it is a hard sport to leave because it's lonely. I'm not a boxer, but from what I know from spending time with fighters, and it's also probably for a lot of them coming away from that limelight is hard, because you've been the star and now you're like forgotten, and it's trying to balance that out. Yeah. So there's never quite a perfect math with it, but we're always there when we can help fighters, as and when.
Frank, interested to hear your views on something that we talk about, just as pure boxing fans, really, quite a lot. Should there be a governing body, like a united governing body for the sport?
I think that could be the biggest benefit to the sport as a whole, like a global governing body coming together that oversees everything. I think there's too many different organisations, there's too many it's so confusing. I work in boxing, there's so many belts, I don't even know what they all are, and again, how is that messaging going out to all of these fight fans? It's like, what does that mean? So I 100% think that would help the sport as a whole. I actually think that would be better than bringing together all the promoters. What would be better is bringing together one governance across the sport as a whole.
And then from FIFA,
whatever it is, And then it's like, look, you've seen obviously Turkey Al Sheikh just recently purchased the Ring magazine. I think they'll Ring magazine title is something that's been highly coveted for years, and that's going to be something big. But you've got 4 governing bodies. Then you've got multiple world championship belts or interim belts between them. Then you've got multiple intercontinental, international, European, so many belts.
They've all got different rules as well.
Yeah, and like I say, I even get confused. So and this is what I do all day, unfortunately. I struggle with it.
The thing is, we asked Marnie Swindles that question. We asked Ben Shalom that question. We've asked you that question. You've all said the exact same thing. Does anyone at a certain level that can start having that conversation have that opinion as well? Does Eddie have that opinion?
Yeah, I think we all do, but I think it's just the sheer scale of bringing, when you think how big these organisations are in football, like FIFA, for example, or across other sports, the sheer scale of that discussion in a sport like boxing, where there are hundreds of events a week, professional events every week, it's like, where do you start with it? And also the funding of it. This is something that needs substantial funding as well. And the reality is, the majority of people don't really want the onus of being the regulator of a sport. And I understand that. Do you know what I mean? Like, we work with the British Boxing Board of Control almost every week. They have to make tough decisions all the time. So I get that element. It's not an easy position to be in. But I definitely think it would benefit if there's a way of doing it. And like I say, I think the only way that can be done is like by someone with a lot of money who comes in to centrally regulate the sport as a whole, including not just governing, but like not local sanctioning body, but these global, these WBC, WBA, IBF sanctioning bodies as well. So I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. And what about AJ? You know, for the kind of the remainder of his career now, how do you kind of see that mapping out? What kind of discussions have you had with Anthony about kind of where he goes?
Look, he's someone who has never shied away from any challenge. Like every time when he has lost in the past, he jumps straight back in there. He's not concerned or scared about taking risks. I think the move right now is the most important move of his career. Though, at his age and where he is, he can't go into a fight not being 100% prepared. Right? Like if he's not ready, and the whole thing was to fight in February against Dubois again, he's not going to be ready for that. And the truth is, let's see as well what happens with Fury in December. That's the biggest fight. Even regardless of Fury losing that fight, that is still probably up there as one of the biggest fights in the sport, Joshua against Fury. Yeah. Because you go back to the point, people don't really care about losses, they get forgotten. It's about profiles and individuals coming together. That's a fight that's been spoken about for 8 years, 7, 8 years, whatever the time frame is. And that's a fight we all want to see. Whatever decision he makes next has got to be the right decision for him. And it's not about warm-up fights, it's not about having stay busy fights. It's just about making the best decision. And him going into a fight in February, he wouldn't be ready for. You know, and then on the other side, people go, why'd you do that fight if you weren't ready for it? Because you can't really win in boxing. Yeah. Because if he would have gone in for it, like I said, they would have moaned that he wasn't ready and fit. So it's about seeing how the next few months go, getting back in camp in the early part of next year, and you'll just see him in big fights.
Incredibly, we've sort of got round to Joshua Fury by just naturally, really. Incredibly.
Yeah. It was only a matter of time.
It's only taken the time.
It was always going to happen.
It was always going to come. Is that the big one that the Saudis are keen on? Were you saying they want to put on big shows, the biggest fights? Is Fury Joshua the one that would be for them the sort of pinnacle, do you think?
Yeah, look, I think they know how big that fight is. That fight's also huge in the UK. Like it's probably, like I say, I go back to the point, it's the biggest fight out there. You know, they've got their eyes set fully on Usyk Fury. That's a massive fight. It was an amazing fight the first time around. And look, Usyk Fury, up to 7 rounds, Fury was winning that fight. Usyk, as he does, he always finds a way. It's not a foregone conclusion that Usyk does the same thing again. You know, you have to say Usyk's favourite going into it, but it's going to be a great fight again. And, you know, no one, the heavyweight landscape and division, you can try and second guess and plan and do all these things. You just have to let it play out. Because you waste so much time. I mean, look at Joshua Deontay Wilder was done, and Joseph Parker beat Deontay Wilder, who I'm very happy for because I love Joseph Parker.
Yeah, great guy.
But it's like you build up to all these moments, and then it goes, oh, that's not happening now. You know, so it's like just kind of have to let it be. And I'm very confident you'll see big fights next year.
Just final one from me. Is there going to be a pressure to get Joshua Fury, if it happens, over here? Do you think there's going to be an overwhelming pressure from people that's got to take place here?
Yeah, I'm sure there is, but look, with all of these things at the same time, it's about making fights happen. And if we can see a fight, but it takes place in Timbuktu, so wherever the place is, but it means fights happen, then surely as fight fans we have to go happy days. We all sit here though and go, how great would it be to see X, Y, Z, this fight take place? Of course, we're as much passionate about that as anyone, but at the same time we just want to see great fights. And if wherever that means they take place, happy days.
Fantastic. Grant, thank you for joining me. Frank, thanks for coming on. It's been fantastic. Thanks for opening our eyes, I think, on quite a few topics there. Top man, hopefully we'll see you back at the football again sometime.
Yeah, I'll be down there soon when we all play West Ham.
All the best.
Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. See you next time. That was brilliant. Thank you for that.
Yeah?
Do you want a drink? Do you want some water or something?
No, I'm alright.
You sure?
Yeah, thank you.
Top man. Is that all okay?
Yeah, you happy?
Thanks. Yeah, very happy. Thank you for that. Yeah, yeah, really good, really good.